We start off this segment with Kenya as the country economy shrunk by 5.7% year on year in the second quarter, the first time it has contracted since the mid-2000s. Let's look at which sectors have fared badly, how this compares to other large sub-Saharan African markets, and what the outlook for the economy and businesses is. I'll be joined by the Associate Practice Lead, Sub-Saharan Africa at Dorka Frontier, Matt Kindiga. Good afternoon, Matt. Thank you very much for joining us on the program.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me today.
Okay, we've seen most economies in sub-Saharan Africa contract in second quarter. Now, how does Kenya's performance compare to other large markets in the region?
Yeah, so Kenya's contraction is not surprising. You know, we've seen economies across the world suffer very dismal or really bad second quarter economic activity. So it's really unsurprising. However, what has surprised us is the relatively steep decline that Kenya has experienced. So at 5.7% year on year, the contraction is nearly as steep as Nigeria's and also much steeper than that experienced in a country like Ghana. And so what this says is two or three main things. One is that it actually indicates how relatively open the Kenyan economy is. So it's been a lot more directly affected by the global economic slowdown. And it also shows the importance of exports and tourism as drivers of growth. So it's been really interesting to see this. But however, I would say that we're still waiting for a number of growth figures to come out. So Ethiopia hasn't published its second quarter data yet, neither has Cote d'Ivoire. So it will be really interesting to see whether those markets also have suffered as severely as Kenya in the second quarter.
Okay, let's look at the sectoral performance. Were there sectors that stood out in terms of performance?
Yes, so Kenya, it's really interesting. So we saw pretty significant contractions in wholesale and retail trade. That was to be expected, contracted by about 7%. Accommodation and food services, also around about 85%. Education was very badly affected and transport as well. But I think the most interesting performance was agriculture. It performed exceedingly well in the second quarter. And we also saw mining activity post its strongest activity over the last 5 years. So really quite outstanding performance there, which was very surprising. But one thing I would say was also quite unusual was that ICT, information, technology and communication, telecoms did not perform as well as we were expecting. So this sector only grew by about 4% year on year, which really is against what we were expecting because, you know, with lockdowns and commercial restrictions in place, we were expecting the IT sector to perform a lot better as people rely on the internet and telecommunications more. So yeah, those were the really most interesting sectors that performed in terms of their performance in the second quarter.
Now, how likely we will see a full-year recession this year, and how quickly can companies expect the Kenyan economy to recover as we look into 2021?
So our base case is that we don't expect Kenya to fall into a recession in 2020. However, this latest GDP data, because it is a bit worse than we were expecting for Q2, means that a full-year recession is a bit more likely. And this will be one of the first recessions, I think, in over 12 years, so since the post-election violence of 2007. So all eyes really will be on Q3 data to see how rapidly the economy rebounded. In terms of the outlook for 2021, so we're very optimistic that Kenya will stage a very rapid rebound next year. And this is going to be driven by the fact that the economy or the country entered the coronavirus pandemic from a position of strength. So the government had laid the foundations for pretty upward growth, so through pro-business reforms that supported healthy investments into the manufacturing industries, which were partly driven by high levels of foreign direct investment, but also very healthy activity for consumers. So we were seeing falling inflation, especially food price inflation. So the foundations have been laid for a fairly healthy recovery. next year. I would say the one sector that will not recover for a number of years will be the tourism sector, on which Kenya is quite reliant. So that is one to look out for. Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much, Matt, for your time on the show.
Thanks very much.